What's up, everybody? This is Real with Ryan, where I have real conversations with real people who are ready to answer real questions. And today I have Coach Brittain, who's the coach for Mansfield girls basketball and also coordinator. And I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more.
Hey, happy to be here. I'm Coach Brittain, Brooke Brittain. I am the head girls basketball coach at Mansfield High School, athletic coordinator, and as of last year, I retired from 20 years in the Army.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna start off background questions. Okay, so where are you from?
I'm actually from Arlington, Texas.
Really? Okay. What was your first ever job, Coach?
My first job was at the Parks Mall in Arlington. I sold shoes at Foot Action underneath the escalators at the mall.
Really? What made
Yeah.
you want to get into that?
My friends worked there. I
Yeah.
just want to have fun.
And what was your childhood like?
Pretty boring, normal, I thought, and then I realized I was weird.
Yeah.
I loved Michael Jordan. When I was in third grade, I thought I was going to dress up like Michael Jordan for Halloween. It didn't really work out very well. I was just this little tomboy. Had my hair in a hat, had a Michael Jordan shirt on, but that was what I was. I was obsessed with him. Loved GI Joes, which is part of why I joined the Army. So I guess I wasn't that normal of a little girl's childhood, but that was me.
Did Michael Jordan make you want to get into basketball? And
Oh
stuff?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
obsessed. Oh, had the shoes on my pillow.
Oh,
Like at
man.
night. It was a little different, a little weird.
Yeah. So, what experience do you think molded you the most?
I think almost 20 years ago today would be one of the most life-changing parts of my life. I was 20 years old, and I was in the Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was there the first night of the war. So I don't know if y'all know what that is anymore, but basically 9/11 happened, and the United States entered the war on terror, and it was really transitional for our whole country. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like combat. First night of the war, I was on the berm of Iraq and Kuwait, and I was watching bombs drop into Iraq and hearing gunshots. And I'm just this girl from Arlington, Texas, that played basketball at Martin High School. Just this girl that grew up like a normal kid, and then all of a sudden I'm watching a war across the ocean, and so it changed my life. It really altered my perspective as a person. Coming home as a 20-year-old and seeing that life's not all smiles and there's just a
Yeah.
whole different ball game. But also coming home with tremendous gratitude for our country, for my family, for our safety here. There's just so much that I learned. It's hard to really get into it all in a,
Yeah.
got a little deep too quick. But I mean, it did. It was life altering. So going to combat at 20 years old, yeah.
So, how did you and other people during that time kind of remain calm? Then, how did you?
So we had this old guy in our unit, and he was in Vietnam, and he had a Silver Star from Vietnam, and he saw the worst of the worst. And he's kind of a grumpy guy, but we loved him, and his name was Sergeant Davis. And we would look at Sergeant Davis, and we'd be like, he's not scared yet. We're good. And if he got scared, we're like, okay, I'm starting to get a little
It's
scared.
time.
All right. But so we kind of looked to our leaders, and the people that had been through things a little difficult before us. And so we looked to our leadership and the people that we respected and knew the way. And we kind of tried to model after them. And I think that helped us a lot, having great leadership around us. Yeah.
That's really good. So, what do you think is the greatest life lesson you've learned so far?
I think learning that the best version of myself is on the other side of adversity. And what I mean by that, I think you get this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta tell your audience first. This girl's cool, right? I mean, I tried to get her to come be part of our team because she's just special. But I'm gonna let them learn your story over time. But I think when adversity hits, you have an opportunity to decide who you want to be, and you get to decide if you want to sit there and wallow in pity and let it get the best of you, or if you want to let yourself develop and find new things. Like, I know you got taken away from the game of basketball that you loved, but look at you right now. Like adversity tells us, hey, go find a new way. Go find a new way to be great. And just that lesson of the greatest version of yourself is on the other side of adversity. You just got to go find it. I think that's the most important thing I've ever learned.
I like that. Yeah, I agree with you. What's something you knew now that you wish you knew when you were a senior in high school?
This is funny. I'm gonna get personal. I probably should. So I wrote a letter to myself. My English teacher, my senior year, had us write a letter to ourselves in the future, and we were supposed to talk to ourselves like 10 years down the road. So then she mailed it out, and I read it. I'm like 28 years old, and I read this letter, and I just got to start laughing. I mean, I talked about how important it was that I would have a husband and kids. And I don't know if y'all know this, but I have a wife and no kids.
Real different.
Yeah, very different. And I grew up Baptist, and I'm still very Christian, but I just felt that who I thought I had to be or was supposed to be as an 18-year-old, and who I found that I still loved myself at a whole different version of myself and loved myself more because I was my authentic self. I think it's funny to see that 18-year-old Brooke didn't really know what I would be happy with. And I'm so happy and love myself today that reading that letter, I would have been like, that 18-year-old Brooke would have thought I was crazy today. But, it's just life, you got to grow into yourself. I love myself now, and I don't think I, at 18, would have been okay with that. And I think that's a cool change.
Yes, I'm proud of you for that. It's hard to get there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so I noticed that I just pay attention to how you are at school and stuff and how you connect with people. And I'm always just asking myself or just thinking like, wow, that's good if she does that. So how do you keep the bonds you have with people so healthy? Or how do you even start to make those bonds?
I think the world's kind of like a mirror, and you get back what you give to it. And I think that if you look for, I like to say a lot that I look to see a joyful soul in other people. So even if they're having a bad day, I'm going to approach them as a joyful human. And so they may be down, but I'm going to go give them a high five because I know that they want to be joyful, even if they're not joyful in that moment. And so through that attempted interaction, even if they're not ready to receive it, I believe that I start to get it back over time, and it builds bonds over time where you connect and there's this positivity. But it starts with seeing the best in people, even if they're not in their best, and doing your best to see that even when they're showing their worst sometimes. So.
What keeps you motivated in life?
I'm motivated very much by love. I know that sounds cheesy, but I think love for other people inspires you to serve them and find ways to help them grow to be their best version of themselves, inspires them to be great, and for them to be great and for me to be encouraging to them, I got to be on track. I can't be a mess and go be great for others. And so I wish it was that I love myself so much that was my motivation and I wanted this, but I want to see other people be great. So I think my motivation is to grow my own gifts to help them. That's just kind of my heart.
And I feel like that pours into like your team and stuff. It definitely reflects how you are as a coach too. I feel like you be good with that. Yeah. What's something you're currently working on right now?
I'm working on me right now. Okay. I'm going to tell you, I hit 40 this year.
And
the health, I mean, I had surgery a couple weeks ago. God has been good to me. I was worried about cancers and all sorts of things this year, and had some surgeries to make sure I didn't, and I don't, but it is like all of a sudden you're surgeries and hurting, and I feel like I've just got off track, which is okay. I'm not beating myself up for it, but I'm so happy to be like, time to work on me. It's time to get on the treadmill and on the row machine.
You still got to be like Michael Jordan.
I got to get Michael Jordan, so yeah, for sure. But no, I'm working on me. I think that that's a lifelong journey, but sometimes you got to dig in a little deeper, and I've got to right now.
So how do you find the motivation to do that? Like as far as like working out, we don't feel like working out or something. How do you still find the motivation to do that?
I think that it's important that we bring great energy to other people, and we're responsible for that energy. And if I don't feel good, I can't bring it. And I'm getting out. Like I said, I had surgery 2 weeks ago, and I've struggled a little bit before that, and I'm getting out of this funk of not having it. So I'm just happy to have it, but I'm also happy to get more of it because, again, the world's a mirror. The more I give it, the more I'm going to get it. Yeah. And so I want to be healthy for me to have better energy to give to other people.
I hear you. So what are some healthy habits you've developed that you feel have helped you?
Working out, somehow every day, just getting your body moving every day. But sleep. Sleep's probably my most important habit that I learned early 20s, mid 20s when I came back from combat. And I mean, I was a mess. I was a mess. And I would sacrifice sleep for work. I love basketball. I'd break down film till like 3, 4 in the morning. I'd have my practices going, and then I'd be up at school at 7:30. I wasn't a very nice person those days, and you lose such just your mental capacity just dwindles so much when you lose those 8 hours of sleep. And so I had to get back to taking care of that. Sleep's a super important habit.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do when you're sad?
So I'm human, right? So I got the answer that I like to do, and then I got the answer that we fall into. I think the answer that I try to do is get my body moving, get out in the sunshine, exercise, good for endorphins, good for stress, and then also talk to people. When you're struggling with something, I think it's good to get things out of your head. Share if you're struggling, but I'm human, and there's those days where sometimes you're sad and you let distractions kind of fill that void. Scroll TikTok. Yeah. I don't know if you know, I got like 750 TikTok followers, 1,000 TikTok followers. It's so random, but I'll play on TikTok. I don't. I do have 750,000 TikTok followers, but I don't.
Y'all go follow her.
Yeah, go follow me. It's a laser. You're going to think it's boring, but I can get into those distractions, but I don't let myself sit in those distractions. I think it's important that sometimes it's okay to sit back and get away from whatever you're feeling, but you got to sometimes lean into it and find a way to drive through it and not just distract your world away.
Got you. So what do you do when you're overwhelmed? Is it kind of the same thing? What do you do?
I like to talk to people and tell them I need help. Even with stuff, it's hard to do that because, especially when you feel like you're a leader, it's hard to say I need help on this, but when you feel overwhelmed, you can, again, sit in it and let it overwhelm you, or you can speak to it and say, how do I get through it?
Yeah.
So sometimes you can get through it alone and you brainstorm through it. And sometimes you just say, I need help. And overwhelmed to me is telling me it's time to say I need help. So
what was your catalyst for that, to be able to say, okay, let me talk to somebody and tell them that I need help?
It's been different all throughout life. So I'm not the best person to look up to for when to get help, because I struggled with depression really bad in my 30s, like early 30s. And I don't think I asked for help soon enough, but I did. But I didn't ask for it soon enough, and I worked my own healthy habits through it, but it took me a really long time, and it was almost like into my rope by the time I was like, hey, I'm at the end of my rope over here. Mm-hmm. I finally called a friend who's a pastor at a church, and she just came over, and I said it out loud, and then she prayed with me, and it was like speaking it out of my head just brought me to a whole new level of peace. But I don't know what the catalyst is. You just kind of have to care about yourself, and know when it's time to talk to somebody. And I think there's beauty in being strong and being resilient and not letting everything get you down and protecting your mind. But there's also importance to saying, like, hey, I'm not feeling like me. Mm. And if you know you and you're in tune with you, I think you're going to know really when it's time to ask for help. And there's just no perfect answer to that.
So what are some things that you like about yourself?
I love people. And I think my love is special. I think that I see the best in others, and that I'm an encourager, and I think that's special. I think a lot of people in this world today, we get wrapped up in ourselves, and we tend to get self-absorbed. Mm-hmm. And I like that I don't stay that way. It's cool. You get an award, like, oh, I'll put my picture or whatever. Like, it's cool to be successful. But I think that one of the things I love about myself is that I get my greatest fulfillment in seeing others be great. And I think that's cool.
That is cool.
Thank you.
That is cool. Okay, so what is the hardest thing you've ever gone through, and how did you get through it?
That depression that I mentioned, it's so deep. I don't know if I got time. I got time. Goodness. I mean, there were days that I didn't know. I think probably my dog was the thing that got me through the day. Like, I love my dog. She's awesome, by the way. But I don't know that I would have made it if I wasn't thinking about going home to my dog. Like, that was where I was. And I know, knowing me today, you might not be able to see that, but I mean, there's many ways where I could not be here today. And I navigated that very hard, felt so lonely, even though nobody knew it. And I think the hardest part was I was a leader. And I was an adult, and I was a leader, and I had a team. And, I was afraid that if I told people how I was feeling, I would steal my ability to do my purpose.
I see what you're
You know,
saying.
like if I tell you like I'm so depressed I can barely get out of bed,
Yeah.
then I lose my team and then I got nothing, you know. And at that point I was worried about if I dealt with that, I was going to lose it all.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard, you know. And I think what got me through, it's crazy, but little moments, you know, like you have to find the smallest moments to get you through until you can find the next moment, until you can find yourself to go speak. So like, for example, I remember going home one day and feeling like, man, I don't even want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was driving home from work and I just remember looking at the car next to me and there was this little boy in it. And he's probably 4 or 5 years old and he just looks up at me and he just waves. And I looked at him and it was a connection that, you know, I felt like for some reason, I'm gonna get emotional. You know, everybody, I'd seen 70,000 people that day. I'd been walking the halls of Martin High School, 4,000 kids, like seeing people all day long, and I hadn't felt seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like nobody knew that I needed to be smiled at and loved that day.
Is that why you always greet people now?
Yes. Yeah, big piece, right? So just seeing that little kid, and I'm like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome, you know, and it made me feel good.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about the kid. I'm like, what an awesome little kid, you know, like, hey, you're an awesome kid. Like, can't wait to see you. You know, like it's great to see people that bring you joy. And that interaction, as minimal as it was a moment that gave me hope. And that's just one. I mean, there's dozens I could point out. But when you have those moments, even with hard kids, you know, I remember having a kid in the hall that he was cussing out teachers, and it was a really bad day. He was having a really bad day, and I pulled him over and kind of got onto him, but loved on him, right? At the end of it, he's like, all right, thank you, coach. I'm going to try to be nicer to people today. And I remember being like, he needed me today.
Yeah.
Like, he may not get in trouble today, you know, like he's going to try to be nice, and he meant it. He was going to try to be nice to people. And that moment made me feel my purpose in life and made me realize, like, let's continue. And then I started to go ask for help, but I had to be open to those moments.
I'm glad you're here, Coach Brittain.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So how do you deal with people who think the complete opposite of you?
I mean, I like people that challenge your way of thinking, you know. I think it's important that we don't all put ourselves in a place where everybody says the same thing.
Yeah.
So thinking differently is cool. Having a different heart is a little different. If you know, I told you I'm all about love and like gratitude and encouragement. So if you're the opposite of that and you're hateful and mean and judgmental, like that's different than thinking different than me. But those type of people, I feel bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you don't live with love, like probably dealing with them with some compassion, but boundaries. You know, if you can't be good to people, like I'm going to stand up for them or I'm not going to have you around. But if you're struggling and you're being hateful because you're hurting, then I'm going to be compassionate. But those kind of people, that's how I deal with them. But different thinkers, I just listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's some career questions now. Okay.
Okay.
So what's the hardest part about what you do?
Man, I'm getting some deep ones today. So, I mean, I've dealt with a lot of hard things as an educator. You know, at Martin, we had Carl Wilson was murdered not too far from here. He was one of our students. He had a little boy, and you know, we're in the middle of basketball season. He's a football player. He's friends with all my kids, and having to have all of our kids just crying in the hallway, killed in gang violence, right in a nice community. You know, but it still exists, and gun violence exists, and I mean, we're dealing with it every day. That's hard, you know, that's real. Trauma that kids face beyond even outside that, their abuses that they face at home, like those come into our ears as educators, and we got to sit with them in it and help them navigate it. And those are hard, but again, why we're here, you know, so it's not anything I would take away. It's just, it's hard. Yeah.
So do you feel like you kind of naturally grow like connections with the kids and stuff, like pretty easy?
I'm not all of them. You know, I think it's kind of like any people, like some people you're trying to be there for them all, and some are ready to receive that and some aren't, you know, and some you naturally easily connect with, and some they're just a little different growing up. So it just depends.
Yeah. Okay. So what's the easiest part about what you do?
I get to hang out with cool people all day.
Yeah.
Like I met you, you know, like walking the halls. I'm like, hey, you look cool. How's it going? You know, like I just get to I get to hang out a lot, you know, and even when I was in the classroom and I've taught world history, world geography, economics, criminal justice, like I've taught everything.
Do you think you were a good teacher though?
No.
No, just
No. I was all right. I was all right. I was the cool teacher, which is not a good teacher. I was always trying to connect with kids, and I didn't care that much about grading all the papers. So I'm just kidding. I was a good teacher, but I love what I'm doing right now. But I forgot. I got sidetracked. I just like hanging out with cool people, you know. And at a school, especially at a public school, you get all dynamics. Like it's so diverse, you know. You get people from all walks of life, and somebody that may go home to a family that eats dinner at night and they might drive a Benz, they may have the same self-esteem struggles as somebody that doesn't have their parents at home because they're working 2 jobs. They don't have a dime on their table. Like they still all need love and support and people to connect with. And I think at Mansfield High School, we've got a lot of that diversity, and it's cool to see all of them. You know, everybody's different. They bring different stuff.
Okay, so can I ask you, because I've never been to Martin, so what's the difference between, like, what's different about Martin versus Mansfield?
So I went to Martin, which is interesting. Martin's a lot bigger as far as there's a lot more students in the hallway, a lot more crowded. Both are great places. I think, you know, very close in community. I think they both offer a lot of unique and great programs. There's a lot of similarities. They really are both great schools.
That's good. Okay, so if you weren't doing this, like coaching and stuff, what could you see yourself doing? What do you think you'd be doing right now?
So in the Army, I always had these things that I wanted to do that I never did because I wanted to coach. And so the first one was when I was a young soldier, somebody said, "You'd be a good helicopter pilot." I'm like, "I would."
That's
like,
different.
Dang, that's cool. You know, and you can in the Army, there's a lot of, you can join as one thing, but you can find your way into other jobs. And they were telling me, like, I can get you hooked up. I've got a chief warrant officer. You drop a packet, you go through flight school, but it would have changed the trajectory of my life. And my second thing that I wanted to do, I went to Arabic language school for 5 weeks, and I was like, this is awesome. I just like language. And they had that was like the mini version for people that were going to deploy to Iraq, just to get them like conversational. But they had a 2-year school that was it was out in California. It's a linguist school. So you'd leave like you could read, write, all that stuff, talk. Cool. And I was like, that would be really cool. Again, 2 years of my life just on that would have taken me completely away from basketball. But those are probably 2 random things that would have been cool.
That is cool. Okay, so what made you want to do what you're doing?
So my uncle was a state championship head football coach in Texas. He opened the school called Flower Mound Marcus. And when he opened it, I got to see him as an athletic director and a football coach, hiring coaches to start the school up, being a supporter of all these programs. And I'm like, that's cool. Like, what a cool job. You know, you get to be around sports, you get to serve coaches. And my dad was his biggest fan, so we would drive all around the state watching his football games every Friday night. So I just grew up, it was like the family business, like the thing to do. But my dad wasn't a coach, but that was kind of where my heart was for it.
Okay, so what's next for you?
Good question. I'm trying to get my PhD. Okay. I want to get my doctorate in sports administration. However, I'm having some struggles, so I'm working on that right now. I need to be online because I'm not leaving my job, so I need it to be full-time online with maybe minimal showing up to a school. I don't have to move anywhere to go to do a doctorate, but I can't find the programs. Everyone I've tried to get into is not ready or not accepting people, so that's on the agenda, but I'm struggling on that. So
it's going to happen.
It will.
It's going to happen. It will. So what has coaching taught you about yourself?
Good question. That I like watching others be great. I mean, really. You said, what do you love about yourself? And I love that about myself. And I didn't know that before I started. You know, this is stupid. When I was going to start coaching, when I was young, I was 20 years old, 21 years old, and I was thinking about my first interview. I do this coach pose, you know, like authoritarian, you know, like coaches are just supposed to tell you what to do. And that's kind of what I thought I was like doing. I was going to learn how to like tell people what to do, and I'm going to yell and stuff. And then I realized when I actually became a coach, I'm like, that ain't it. You know, your leadership's not a title. Like the word coach isn't going to get it done. And this yelling and doing this isn't going to actually inspire people. And I think I just learned that I enjoy the actual act of coaching people and encouraging them to be the best version of themselves. and finding the buttons to push to do that.
Yeah.
Some people need a little bit more tough. Some people need a bit like, a little hug. And
Yeah.
I enjoyed learning that I enjoy that.
So is body language important to you? Like, do you pay attention to body language?
Oh, yeah, I pay attention to body
Yeah,
language,
I
yeah.
do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is your main goal while working? Like every day while working? Like when you're walking through the school or talking, like what's your main goal?
Get better every day, right? Like personally, professionally, as a campus, the programs within the school, our relationships with kids, basketball. What are we doing to get better every day? And one of the things right now, like we've got a tough basketball district, and so I'm thinking, I've coached a long time. I've coached some really high level programs, and I've been to some of the biggest games in the state, and then we get there, and I'm still looking at how do we get better again. So I'm going back and relearning things, master the boring. Like I might already know it. I might have done this for 10 years, but I need to study it one more time to make sure I'm not missing something so that I can get better today at that very simple action so we can be better again. Get better every day.
Okay, so what has coaching taught you about other people and also life in general?
People are capable of great things, and they're resilient, and they want to be part of something bigger than themselves. I think people lose that in this social media culture where it's all about me, me, me. But watching people actually commit to a team and get out of it like that, just that thing that you can't get anywhere else about sacrificing yourself for something bigger than you. People want that. And when you're watching sports and you just see the shiny trophies on TV and stuff, you don't necessarily get that. But when you're watching kids grow and evolve and grow as humans, you learn that that's where it's at. People want to be part of something special.
Yeah. So what routines do you think you've developed while coaching?
You already said my high fives.
Yeah. Hey, you messaged your high five.
I think one of the most important things I can do is high five somebody. Greet them every day. Like I need to greet them before I coach them.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure that as they're walking in the door, I'm welcoming them. And that is a routine. That wasn't a routine for me when I was depressed. When I was depressed, I wanted to be by myself, and I was struggling. I didn't want them to see that. So I was kind of in the gym just with my practice plan. All right, when next, and I think it's important that as I got out of that I was that for them.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Okay. So, Coach Brittain, what's any advice you have for anybody watching?
Any advice? Okay, if you're watching this, first of all, you're crushing it, because if you're watching this girl, you're absorbing great things in your brain. I think we are so responsible for what we allow into our brains, what we allow into our lives, and we are not taking enough responsibility for that. So if you're watching something that's positive, whether it be, this podcast or one, Ed Millett's an awesome one. There's some great ones out there. He's like, oh, he's so good. I listen to him all the time. So if you're pumping positive into your brain, first of all, good for you, and keep doing it. And, growth is so important. It's a daily thing. I believe confidence comes from momentum of doing the right things continually. Like if you're having a confidence problem, think about, what was I doing the last 72 hours? Was I growing? Was I sleeping well? Was I eating well? Was I treating people right? And if you're doing those things well and then you're struggling with confidence, let's look at something else. But if you're doing good stuff, starting with things like this, keep it rolling, because confidence comes from momentum, and that's where you continue to be great.
Man, it's going to be hard for people to talk this way. But no, Coach Britt, thank you for being on here. I really appreciate it. I feel like you left some good messages for people. That's it, y'all. But no, so my whole goal for this podcast is just to reach out for people my age and people watching this, to have conversations with people that I feel like people watching should be having. You never know what you could take away from conversations with people, what you could learn, the bonds you could have with people. So just, if you're watching this, just try it with somebody. But yeah, thank you. This is Real with Ryan.